Welcome to the first of InterMat's conference correspondent videos, and our leadoff hitter, our guinea pig, is our Big 12 correspondent, Seth Duckworth. You may know him from Pistols Firing. He has a couple other places you may have known him from. But Seth, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, glad to be here, Earl. Kind of excited. It's a little bit of a new territory for me. We talked about it earlier, but don't do a lot of video stuff, usually written, but I think it'd be kind of fun to dive into some stuff, and especially just kind of overall with the Big 12. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, so kind of the big news, it's not necessarily breaking news, but over the past month and a half was the re-edition coming back. It's Missouri back in the conference after I think 2013 was when they left for the SEC and competed in the MAC wrestling wise. Now I know you were someone that was kind of following this stuff as far as, there's a lot of behind the scenes, even maybe a year ago, 6 months ago, this seemed like a far-fetched idea. What can you tell us that's changed in that period of time?
Yeah, I think in general, my overall thought and the murmurs and stuff I'd heard from years back was there was so much bad blood, not necessarily with the wrestling schools. Obviously, a lot of the wrestling programs wanted Missouri back in and to be wrestling in the Big 12, but with like Texas, and all the money they carry and all the swing they carry in the Big 12, there are rumors that they really didn't want them back in, and they're even just a lot of bad blood there. And I even kind of almost laughingly, now that looking back on it, I tweeted something like, yeah, I've just heard to that effect, to say, you've heard that the rumors of how bad the blood is in some of the bigger schools and how that impacts everything. And that I didn't think it'd be happening anytime soon. And I pretty much immediately got a text from a Big 12 coach that'll remain nameless, saying, "Hey, no, like pump the brakes a little bit. There's some stuff shifting around, and basically that the door kind of opened back up and the talks had started, and that within a couple weeks of that, I had basically been told it's definitely 100% going to happen. And then, of course, they came out and made the official announcement. I think anybody that's a wrestling fan and knows it's great for the conference. It's great for the school. It's great for Missouri. I mean, if you're a Missouri fan, you definitely have a lot more intrigue with them getting back in the Big 12 than you did with them in the MAC. No disrespect to the MAC or anything, but just those old rivalries with Oklahoma State and Oklahoma, and getting a lot of that back. I really think it's a great thing and be exciting to cover and follow in the next couple of years. So.
All right, so with that in mind, your first piece for InterMat talked about what this does to the Big 12, particularly the Big 12 tournament. Immediately I wrote something kind of like a pick 'em with Oklahoma State, Missouri, how a duel would have went this year. You kind of looked ahead to how the Big 12 tournament would play out because it was a remarkable tournament. So, what do you see as far as the on-mat results with Missouri back in the conference?
Yeah, well, they've for the most part still dueled with Oklahoma State. I think there were maybe 1 or 2 years that they didn't, but they came down to that tournament that Oklahoma State hosted in Stillwater. Wasn't their starting roster, but a number of guys competed there. So I know that they've kind of maintained Brian Smith and John Smith maintain a pretty good relationship and kind of coordinating a lot of their scheduling and all that stuff. And so the duels will probably go back and forth like they have over the last 10 years, specifically with Oklahoma State. But I think for the tournament format, it's kind of interesting because Mizzou took the Big 12 trophy with them as they headed out. The last tournament, they won it by a pretty slim margin over Oklahoma State. And of course, since then, Oklahoma State has won every single Big 12 tournament since. And it creates, a really interesting dynamic when they come back in, and that rivalry being rekindled in a tournament format and not just in the duels we're seeing every year. But I think the strength of Mizzou, if you look at that, the last year where they went out, Oklahoma State had Jordan Oliver and Chris Perry and Jamal Parks, a couple other guys that were pretty solid in that season. And their powerhouse kind of heavy hitters guys that scored a lot of points at nationals. So Oklahoma State outdistanced Missouri by quite a bit at nationals, and even that was the year Oklahoma State fans probably remember with Stever and Oliver, where Oliver got the Stever got the takedown late, and a lot of controversy there. But still, as a tournament scoring, Oklahoma State was for the NCAA tournament just in a lot better shape than Mizzou because they had heavy hitters like Perry and Oliver, and then as as in the Big 12 tournament format, which back then it was just 4 teams, it almost became like a duel. And in that format, Mizzou had a little bit of an advantage. And I think this year it's kind of going to almost replicate the exact same thing. You look at the like Dayton Fix, AJ Ferrari, they're going to be probably NCAA finalist type guys that are going to score a whole lot of points at nationals. And it's hard to see exactly where Mizzou would make up 2 finalists and guys that are going to get a lot of bonus points all the way through the tournament as far as their scoring. But in a Big 12 tournament format where you don't have the depth, you don't have, the strength of all the different conferences and all the different guys there, they have, 125 is kind of, you look at, you got UNI, you got Brody Teske, he's pretty heavy favorite to go win it again next year, but really anybody could get second there. And Mizzou's got enough strength there that they could be a finalist. They could be a finalist at 133. They could be a finalist at 141. Should be a finalist at 49, 57. Like they have this kind of depth that maybe isn't necessarily a bunch of guys that are going to go win the NCAA tournament. They're a bunch of like fringe All-American blood round type guys, which again, I the way I see it is it doesn't break down into them just immediately coming back and beating Oklahoma State out in a NCAA tournament format, but they're immediately probably, you can make a strong argument that they're the favorite to win the Big 12 this year, just because of what you look at with Oklahoma State and their heavy hitters versus their depth that Missouri has. Like that just produces a lot more points in a Big 12 tournament format. And I really do think, Oklahoma, of course, tied Oklahoma State last year, the Big 12 tournament. They're going to come right back. I think they're a solid contender. They're not really losing anybody. And a lot of their younger guys should improve a lot, and they got a transfer in that's pretty solid at 125. So it's not just, it's not. I think immediately in my head it goes into this immediate Oklahoma State rivalry with Mizzou, but you could look at what they could do, what Wyoming could do. Wyoming went too far out in the team race. There's just solid all the way around, but Mizzou definitely comes back in as probably who I would say is probably the favorite to win the Big 12 this year. So
yeah, as somebody who does national rankings, Mizzou strikes me as a team that's had a lot of 7 through 15 guys, pretty much their whole lineup, got with a couple exceptions, but yeah, a lot of those 7-15 guys may not be locked for all Americans, but they're going to be tough dual squad, tough small tournament. So as we're looking at the conference as a whole, have some changes as far as new teams, old teams, or not old teams per se, but just go through a little bit what we have here.
Yeah, sadly, the wrestling world managed to save Stanford, but it didn't happen with Fresno State, and they're getting cut again, and so they're out. But of course, they brought a lot of excitement with Hokut and some of those guys have been there the last couple of years. I've enjoyed watching them in Tulsa, so that's really sad to see them go. But Cal Baptist is coming in, so that's kind of neat. Obviously they're not going to be they're transitioning Division II school. It's not like they're going to be high level competitive right out the gate, but you love to see those smaller programs come in and scrap and what they can do. So I think that'll be exciting to watch and follow and just kind of see where they're at and watch that program grow. I kind of like the concept of what the Big 12 has done as a whole with wrestling, with accepting the Western Wrestling Conference, and you put those kids like that Big 12 brand name on a lot of smaller programs. And to me, that's neat. I mean, obviously you got the Oklahoma States, Oklahomas, the Iowa States, the Mizzous that don't necessarily need all that, but it's cool to get that shine on these, lower division, or not lower division, but the programs that have traditionally not been in a big Power 5 conference like the Big 12. So yeah, I'm intrigued to see what Cal Baptist is able to develop out there, but it is sad to see Fresno State go away.
Yeah, absolutely. So talking about one of these ex-Western Wrestling Conference West Region teams, North Dakota State. They had some news come across the desk yesterday. Obi Blanc has been elevated to associate head coach. What have you seen from that North Dakota State program in the past couple of years? I know I was very kind of shocked, surprised seeing the recruiting class they hauled in. We had them ranked 15th in the country with 8 big boarders.
Yeah, Obi has been a guy I've kind of followed because
Yep.
most people know me for my Oklahoma State coverage. He was an Oklahoma State guy, wrestled for coached for Pat Populizio at NC State. So I think if you see a guy that goes and works under and wrestles under John Smith, which historically one of the best coaches ever, and then goes on to work under Populizio, who's done an incredible job at NC State and built this power out of a school that really wasn't anything where it comparative to where it is right now whenever he got there, and Obi got to be a big piece of that and play a big role in that. It's obviously the guy's been around a lot of great coaches, a lot of great programs, and has got the experience. Probably definitely deserves the what he's getting there, and you have to expect they'll continue to be successful. I like I kind of kin them with Wyoming when you look at the tiers of the programs. Wyoming and them and North Dakota State are the kind of the two that have entered. And I think I would say you could throw Northern Iowa in that conversation too, but they weren't a Western school. Obviously, they just came in a couple of years ago. But out of the Western schools, Wyoming, North Dakota State managed to kind of be competitive a lot quicker than all the other programs, and Obi's been a big part of that. And so it's what he's done and will likely continue to do is a very positive thing, I think, for those guys, and hopefully they continue their success, because like I said, it's been a blast to kind of watch the Big 12 tournament grow and expand and get all these new programs, and especially for me, who's covered Oklahoma State for years, to see another Oklahoma State guy kind of rise in the coaching ranks a little bit. So.
All right, Seth. Well, these videos, we want to keep them short and concise. So that's going to be it for today. Later on this month, we'll talk to you again. As we get closer to the season, there's probably going to be more hard-hitting current stuff to talk about. But just let everybody know where they can check you out otherwise.
Follow me on Twitter at, I think, Seth_Duckworth. I don't even remember what my Twitter handle is, but Wrestling Texas, owrestle.com, and Pistols Firing. And obviously my newest gig is here at InterMat, so check out all the new stuff we got here.
All right, and we're glad to have you, and we will talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Earl.